Okay, boys and girls, this is part 3 of our conversation with Nick Petersen of Mercury Racing about props and lower units a little bit. So if you haven't seen the first 2 parts of that, they're posted right there at the top of the screen if your device allows that, or you can go down and there's a link below where you can see those videos. So this video specifically, we're going to talk about a couple of things, one of which I think is debunking something a little bit, but mainly we're going to talk about the difference in the diameters on some props, the Fury props, the Tempest props, the Bravo props, and the impact of turning a bigger wheel, a bigger diameter prop on your boat. We're also going to talk about, we're going to answer a couple of more of the questions you guys had. We're going to talk about trying to find that sweet spot of speed and RPMs on a boat, and how you kind of, and by the way, Hollis says hello. And how you try to find that sweet spot with a couple of props and sort of your process of elimination. And then the last thing is interesting. It's something that Rick Pierce said to me when I was up visiting at Bass Cat, and it's talking about the belief amongst most of us fishermen, which is ill-informed, that the further you move a motor back away from a boat, the faster you go. And that's not the case unless you have to do it to get the boat balanced. And Nick's going to talk about that because I asked him specifically the question after I had the conversation with Rick. And Rick, it's not that I don't believe you. I just was curious Nick's take on it. And he concurred, and you'll see that in this video as well. So here we go. Here's our last part of this video with Nick Petersen from Mercury Racing. Okay, so I know you chuckled at this question when I sent it to you, and I'm going to read the question. So a friend of mine had an Allison that would turn a 24-pitch Mercury Racing motor, 9,700 RPMs at 105 miles an hour. Mm-hmm. He upped it to a 32-pitch, but he dropped to 8,200 RPMs, but he ran it at 115. So in that go fast world, is the only way to find that sweet spot to have 6 different prop options and keep trying them?
Well, the simplest way to explain it would be you've got to find the prop that gets you within the correct operating RPM for the engine. And we know where an engine makes peak power in most cases. And it's out near in most cases, it's out near the rev limiter, but not quite there. You know, on a 300R, we want to keep you around 6,200 RPM.
What's the rev limit? What's the rev limiter on a 300R?
6,400.
Okay.
And a 400R is 7,000, and we'd like to see around 6,900. So you want to spin as big of a wheel as you can if you're looking for top end speed that can get you at that mark without being on the rev limiter. And those 2.5 liters were a little bit tricky because they had such a wide RPM band.
Explain RPM band to guys. I did a bunch of reading on this, and I'm still not sure I'm comfortable with the theory.
Well, in my space, it's where the engine makes peak power.
Which does not necessarily mean at the most RPMs.
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
So you want to prop the engine, no matter what engine it is, so that it can be at that point where it makes peak power. You know, not 100 less, not 100 more. And typically 100 more, you'll be on the rev limiter. But
is that data published for motors?
Well, we publish a range.
Okay.
So I think on a 300R, we say like 5,800 to 62.
So I can ask Gary on my Pro XS with the Torque Master kind of where my peak range would be in RPMs to get the most power out of my motor.
Yep.
Okay, so that resolves an issue I've always had in my head. You don't necessarily want to run all the RPMs you can run. You want to run that sweet spot.
Correct. Yeah, it's a give and take. Sometimes guys will step up 2 inches of pitch and they'll lose 300 RPM, but they'll still gain 2 miles an hour.
Here, in this case, he dropped 8 degrees in pitch. Is degrees the right term to use there?
Inches.
Okay, so 8 inches in pitch.
Yep.
Dropped 1,500 RPMs and picked up 10 miles an hour.
Correct, yeah, because he's spinning a bigger wheel through the water.
Okay. All right, so can you just talk from your standpoint, 3, 4, 5 props that you would suggest guys who are running non-surfacing, so running the Torque Master, that they probably should consider for different bass boat applications?
Yeah, it'll be, I mean, most of the time it's our FS.
The Bravo One FS.
Correct, yeah. So our staple over the last 5 years, for the boats that it's appropriate for, again, they'll take the Tempest off, which is typically the factory prop on a lot of these newer boats. Not that it's not
Interestingly, most of us are getting Furies as our factory props now.
Yep. But either one, and they're both phenomenal props as they are. But with that Bravo, with the fourth blade and the 15.25 inch diameter, in most cases, guys can raise the engine up 1 hole, if not 2, or 1.5 inches, and generate 300 more RPM with that Bravo FS, and they'll gain 2, 3, 4 miles an hour, and the handling will be much improved. The other thing with the 4 blade is when you're on the hole shot, you don't get so much bow rise. You're not looking at the moon. It really pops you over nice and flat getting up on plane.
Which is also why I like them in rough water, right? I've got better control. I don't get that exactly, because the worst thing, because when it goes up like that, it's coming up like that, and you don't want to do that in the trough of a wave.
Yeah, and with the 3 blade also, you're slapping the water a lot more in the rough water. With the 4 blade, it changes your angle of attack, so you're cutting through the waves more versus slapping up against the bottom.
Is there then another gain to the 5 blade?
Not on non-surfacing.
Okay.
We really don't make any 5 blades, at least at racing. I know there's a high 5, but at racing, we don't make a 5 blade prop that isn't surfaced.
So 3 or 4 blade, pretty much what I should be looking at for my boat.
Yep.
Okay. And I announced this morning, so I went to a Bass Cat Links. So I had bought a I had bought a Fury 3-blade 24 pitch. So it sounds like I might be able to turn the Bravo as well.
Yeah, but again, this is another example of the application based. Bass Cats and Phoenixes run phenomenally well with Furies. They are super efficient at the engine height that boat wants. And a Bravo is typically 2 miles an hour slower than a Fury on those 2 holes.
And then if I throw a Tempest into the mix, what happens?
Again, you need more bow lift, which you won't need because that boat generates a pretty good amount of bow lift. But typically those are about 1 mile an hour slower than a Fury.
So again, Fury, and you're talking Fury 3 or Fury 4?
Fury 3. Fury 4, again, you get the different characteristics with the 4-blade. So guys that run really heavy loads, really rough water, they're not that interested in the absolute top end speed. A lot of times they'll switch from the Fury 3 over to the Fury 4 or the Bravo FS.
I know a lot of guys you said something about it earlier. There's a different feel in handling and cornering with the 4-blade than there is a 3-blade.
Yeah. The boat feels a lot more stable with the 4-blade.
Yeah. Is it just because I'm biting the water more?
That's correct. Yeah.
I think I know more than when I started this process 5 weeks ago. I'm still not sure I know enough, but I want to do some trial and error. So I want to get a couple of props, do some more prop testing. And I'm really interested to talk to Gary to get his take, because obviously I'm not a racing guy. I'm a guy who, now don't get me wrong, if you run up next to me and you're old slow Ranger now, I'm going to hammer down my Bass Cat. But and that's the funny thing. We all want to go a little bit faster, and I'm willing to spend a little bit of money to go faster. So I really want to try all 3 of those. So I had another question now that I think about it. You don't always go faster because you have a bigger diameter prop, right?
Correct. Yep.
All right, never mind, because the question now doesn't make sense in my head. That's the way I go sometimes. It just
me too.
Angle on me. Anything else we should talk about?
That covers most of it from my end.
You guys working on anything new?
Yeah, we always are. We're always experimenting and trying new things. I can't tell you anything about it, but yeah, we'll have new propeller families coming out in the next year or so.
I'll sign a do not disclose. Just send it over.
Yeah.
Okay, so last question for you. So I sat with Rick Pierce at Bass Cat Boats a week ago, and the topic turned to setbacks / jackplates.
And I have always believed that the further you moved a motor away from the boat, the faster you would go. And he said that's not the case. He said you want that motor as close to the boat as you can get it. Do you agree with that? And if so, why?
That's correct. As you move the engine further back off the transom, it's getting dirtier and dirtier water coming off the bottom of the boat. And I'm sure you've seen some videos of that spray that comes off the bottom of the boat that feeds the gear case. As you get farther back, it gets, as we call, dirtier. It's not as clean. The only instance, and it happens in a lot of applications where if you move the engine back, it's faster, is because as designed, the center of gravity of that boat is too far forward. So by sticking that engine 6 more inches back, you're moving the center of gravity back, which is helping that boat out on top end.
Now, give me that again.
Just the center of gravity part?
Yeah. I don't think I follow that.
So a lot of boats these days, because there's so many different iterations and companies are changing them every year, out of the mold, a lot of times the center of gravity is too far forward. So by sticking that engine another 6, 8, 10 inches back, you're almost correcting that center of gravity issue, which is why boats get faster on top end with a jack plate.
So if you were going to do it from a drawing board, you'd get a boat that was dead level when loaded with a motor on it and put the motor right up against the back of the boat.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
But it depends on the whole construction of the boat.
Sure. Yeah.
Companies move the consoles fore and aft all the time, and that really plays with it as well. And different locations of the batteries. Not to say that jack plates aren't a wonderful thing, especially in my world. I think you really can't beat a hydraulic jack plate to give you great planing and great on top end. But yeah, that's the reason why guys pick up speed on top end, is because they're adjusting that center of gravity to be further aft.
And it was interesting. So I just reviewed an Allison, and they moved both of their trolling motor batteries to the front of the boat, which just struck me as so odd. But that's what they're doing, is they're trying to get that boat to, I guess, neutral buoyancy is what you're trying to get it to.
Correct. Yeah, especially with the new big 4-strokes that they're hanging on them. It helps that they move the batteries up to the front.
605 pounds dry weight sitting back there in a 250 Pro XS. So yeah.
Right. Yep.
A buddy of mine put lithium batteries in his boat and thought he was going to go a lot faster. He picked up like barely a mile an hour.
Yeah. So I've got guys that call in, not frequently, but from time to time. And they'll be running with their buddy. And because they've heard that it works online, they'll tell their buddy to go sit on the transom, basically at speed, or on a live well, and they'll gain 2 miles an hour. So that's that happens a lot with lungs, but that's the same deal that we were talking about with the center of gravity.
Yeah, I've always been curious how much faster my boat would be without a 90-pound trolling motor right on the front end of the boat.
Right. Yeah,
it's got to be a huge difference.
It's huge.
Yeah.
I think that's typically 2 or 3 miles an hour.
So, I mean, I guess there's just no way to get a trolling motor down to 35 pounds and keep the juice they got up there. If they do, they're going to, which actually the Ghost is about 10 pounds lighter than the Ultrex. So they're headed that way now. But
yeah.
All right. Well, listen, thank you so much for spending time with us. If we get a bunch of questions, you open to talking to us again?
Absolutely. You let me know anytime.
Okay. All right, guys. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks again to Nick for doing this with us. And this is fascinating stuff. I know what I'll do now is I'll go sit down later, and as I'm editing this, I'll go, I should have asked him that, or wait a minute, that made me think about this. So I'll very likely be back to you. Thanks for your time.
Sounds good, Ken. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay, so that was Nick. I really enjoyed that. As he said, he'll talk to us again. So we'll probably come back to him again. He's motivated me to do some more prop testing. Nick's title at Mercury is Performance Propeller Manager. So next up, we're going to talk to Gary Deal, who does basically the same thing Nick does, or largely the same thing, but at Mercury Marine. So I want to get his take on some other issues that I have, or some other things I've thought about, and it gives us an opportunity. If you have questions that we didn't address, or that these set of videos made you think of, send them to me, kensmithfishing at outlook.com, or you can send them in the comments below, or you can send them on my Instagram page, Ken Smith Fishing 2.0. And hey, Hollis Walker. And we'll get those questions posed over to Gary, and we'll get that video done here in the next few weeks. You want to come say hi to everybody? Come up here, you handsome rascal. Ugh! Say hi, grandmother. Hi, grandmother. So there you go. That was this video. You know what? I want to show you guys one more thing. Actually, Hollis, let's play. So check this out. I got this in the mail the other day. As you recall, I caught a 10.5 pounder on Rayburn this year, and I submitted it to sharelunker, and I got this package in the mail yesterday. So I got this neat hat that says sharelunker on it, which I will be featuring some. I got several bags of Stanley baits, and I got a sharelunker, and I'm going to put that sticker on my boat. I normally don't put stickers on my boat, but I think that's really cool. So if you remember, Spark Energy paid me $500 because I got my fish approved by sharelunker. So 8+ if you're a Spark Energy either customer or you're a Spark Energy Spark Fishing member, you can make money by submitting fish to the sharelunker. So 8+ is $250, 10+ is $500. So I got $500, or 13+ is $1,000. And there's also the big bass tournaments. Again, same thing. If your fish gets approved in any of the 9 lakes that we've listed, I'll put them below again. I'm leading Rayburn right now, and I don't think there's another fish submitted in any of those. So there's still $16,000, $18,000 available there in Spark money this year as well that somebody's going to win by just catching an 8+ and submitting it to sharelunker and then submitting it to us at Spark Fishing, so we know that you're part of the team and that you caught one of those fish and got it approved. So there you go, guys. Thanks for tuning in, and more videos coming up again here in just the next few days. Thanks.